sanctions to Iran for its alleged nuclear activities, and Iran has already and undeniably lost a lot from the said sanctions. The sanctions have hurt Iran so much that in fact Iran has dropped from the top spots of OPEC's list for the largest in oil productions to just third and getting behind the returning Iraq. Iran's oil revenues have dropped immensely and theirs is a matter of making up for all the losses that have incurred and are still incurring from the actions of the US and Europe. Their moves includes increasing motor oil production which is not part of the said sanctions. Meanwhile, the US is still trying to pressure its allies to stop importing oil from Iran. The biggest markets of Iran, namely China, India, and South Korea, have partly heeded the call while Japan did not and has even offered to provide government-backed insurance to Iranian ships carrying oil. India has followed Japan's suit. China did not stop imports but it did cut back on its imports. South Korea halted imports for 2 months but will soon resume importing from Iran, thus keeping Iran's oil markets alive, though struggling from the sanctions. The US and Europe only make up 18% of Iran's consumer market for oil, probably the reason why Iran remains bold in its efforts to keep business alive. But there are other reasons too why the US cannot fully stop Iran in its oil imports to Asia in particular. For one, the four Asian nations mentioned above are big on oil consumption and are largely dependent on Iran for it. These nations cannot afford to halt their industries over the US request. Another, and with South Korea in particular, Iran shares a special bond. South Korea is indebted to Iran, and only oil producer that offered them goods during the oil crisis circus in the 70s was Iran. Lastly, and controversially so, China and India have been trying to make a statement to the US regarding world dominance. It is only strategic and logical for these two nations to make the US request fall on deaf ears. Tony Regis, Philippines.